all you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie, and welcome to Write Smart. Today, it's all about Margaret Atwood and her memoir, The Book of Lives, a memoir of sorts. First off, Atwood's memoir is an autobiography. While its focus is mostly on her writing and personal experiences that relate to her writing, there are other stories in the book that don't necessarily fall into those categories. Yet the book is not a comprehensive look at her life, partly because no book can really do that, but stuff like motherhood isn't really developed. There's pieces of it in there, but the book is a writerly memoir, but it's not really a memoir because there's so much other stuff in it. Yet, for an autobiography, it was actually an inspiring read. I say that because this is one of those books that is a good template if you're wanting to write about your life in chronological order and you want to fit in as much as you can about your life as possible into the same book. Atwood does an excellent job at moving through her story, sticking predominantly to chronology. She's funny, she's witty, and especially the first 100 pages or so, she somehow manages to cover so many different aspects of her childhood without losing the reader. Her writing is so captivating that I didn't mind when she wrote a page or two, what I think anyway, of unnecessary information about the history of the place they moved to, etc. Those first 100 pages or so are so captivating that I would recommend reading Atwood's book to anyone, especially if they're older and are wanting to write about their life. I encourage my mom to use a more categorical approach to her writing rather than chronological because I fear that chronological focus will leave out the good stuff, the emotional stuff, and instead focus more on facts and simply what happened. But Atwood's book shows us that such is not the case. So let me read you a bit to show you how expertly Atwood weaves together her own story as well as her journey in terms of writerhood. And she has this way of kind of talking to the reader at the same time without being annoying. It's really fascinating. Okay, life lesson. I wasn't meant to be organized. I couldn't write anything that pleased me if there had been systematic advanced planning. It was too much like coloring books, an arts and craft form I'd always disliked. There are methodical writers, and then there are improvisers. Some work with schedules, but others fool around, scribbling graffiti on the edges of their pages and playing dice with time. I now knew for certain which kind I was. I don't recommend my method. The potential for desperation is much greater. On the other hand, the boredom quotient is lower. Feeling you're about to dive off a cliff into the unknown where you may either swim or do a 200-page belly flop is stressful, but it's the reverse of tedious. However, there was my inherited Puritan New England conscience to be reckoned with. Waste not, want not. Never throw anything out. The mantra of the Depression and also of our family because you might be able to use it for something else. Thus, the shelves full of rusty screws, decaying rubber bands, and Christmas present ribbons ironed flat and sorted by color that have followed me around all my life. Into a drawer went the nature hut, because you never know when 200 pages of unfocused prose may come in handy. But only one sentence survived from this manuscript and made its way into another work of fiction. It's about an airplane flying high overhead. I was not able to repurpose the rest of my deathless prose for anything. Until now, that is. Look, I just did it on this very page. She is just a master of the craft. And as you progress through the book, Atwood does a lot of name dropping of other writers, as well as giving us background information on those writers or editors or publishers or agents. She spends a lot of time developing her husband's story, which is understandable, but it really broke apart her own story, in my opinion. The book is quite long. Eliminating this type of material would have shortened the book to a more typical memoir length. What I loved most about Atwood's memoir, other than her wit, is when she writes about where her book ideas came from and how she shaped that material through her research. Atwood does a ton of research, which I didn't realize. She has written quite a few books, and to have so many that need some research, like Alias Grace, is an incredible commitment to her craft. She also writes poetry and short stories, so she does a little bit of everything. And she draws too, and she writes children's books. I'm envious of her. If I could pick any writer to be, it would be Margaret Atwood. Plus, I love her sense of humor and her curly hair. This is one of those books that is fabulous to read when you're writing. You will want to emulate her style. I love books that do that while I'm actually writing. As always, the books seem to come to me when I need them most. I wish she would have spent a little more time on The Handmaid's Tale and how motherhood impacted her ability to write, not just time, but also energy and whatnot. I just might keep this book, especially since I have a signed copy that I found at Barnes & Noble and I don't keep many books. For any writer out there, you must read Book of Lives. It will inspire you, invigorate your own writing, and give you ideas for writing. Atwood draws from her own experiences as well as from information she stumbles upon. Ideas are everywhere, and Atwood shows us that. But she also reminds us not to lose our sense of humor, to capitalize on our wit. Even though it's long, Book of Lives is so worth the read. Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Write Smart is to write books so that we can all get a little bit smarter when we read those books, one book at a time.